Lamb is co-founder of the Westport Alliance for Saugatuck. Last year, the grassroots organization battled the hamlet development in Saugatuck. Now they've turned their attention to a new project or a new endeavor, which is the Cribari Bridge over the Saugatuck River. So, Dara, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me, and it's quite a pleasure and an honor to be here with you, Dan. We love your coverage of all things Westport and finding things that we never knew and making us aware of things that we should know, including the bridge and including all events around Saugatuck. So we really appreciate you keeping that top of mind for all Westporters.
Thanks.
So,
which is a great segue into you and your time in Westport. How long have you been here? What got you here?
Oh, I've been in Westport about 30 years. I've been on Saugatuck Island since, now it gets longer and longer, I guess 24 years, which has been a wonderful place to be. It's been through many changes, but it really makes you aware of so much that is around the Connecticut coastline because you become very aware of the tides. When you, in big storms, you can be assured that you need to know the tide schedule so you can get on and off the island. So it really, being on an island, but being so close to really a cultural center of Connecticut is such a gift and really keeps you in touch with the environment and keeps you in touch with nature, you know, in a very different way that I had no expectation of when I moved here. We were over on near Cross Highway and then near Grove Point, so you know. Getting closer and closer to the water as we progressed.
Saugatuck Island, beautiful, wonderful part of Westport.
Yes, yes.
And the only way to get to Westport is through Saugatuck.
You've got it. You've got it. Which is why what goes on in Saugatuck is so vital to us, the 1,200 homes that are in District 1, because it is our only way to access the Post Road, to access the library, to access medical appointments that we might have, shopping, and some of the residents, unfortunately, had already do go to Norwalk for a lot of their services, and we were really afraid, particularly with the hamlet and that type of development, that we would effectively be cut off from Westport, which is the reason why we moved here. And, you know, the movement for the Westport Alliance was actually started with young parents of young children who now found their children had a 45-minute commute to go 7 miles to their schools. And if they needed to reach them during the day for any reason, if they needed to get to the school, they could be sitting in traffic in Saugatuck for 35 minutes. And, you know, it's very difficult now. And when we were facing the potential traffic and the event center and the hotel and all of the things that would have come with the hamlet, it was really something that we knew would be, would really present the kind of problems that would make it pretty much untenable for the residents of District 1.
So the Westport Alliance for Saugatuck was a direct outgrowth of the hamlet proposal?
Yes, yes, it was. And now what we've found is that our community, you know, our outreach is over 3,000 people that we're in communication with pretty regularly, and they want us to be involved in certain issues like the Cribari, what will happen to the Cribari Bridge. They all are in and around either what's going on directly in Saugatuck or other land use issues that would affect residents and really speak to what would be the future of our town, what it will look like, and what it will feel like in the future. And certainly what happens with the Cribari Bridge is very integral with that for many people who access Saugatuck and also who know it as, and kind of the iconography of that area.
So before I get into the bridge, what's the structure? Is it Do you have meetings? Do you have leaders? How do you operate?
Everyone wants to know that, how we operate. We are a group of pretty active activists. We use digital communications a lot. We're in constant communication on our WhatsApp channels and our text channels. And then we, as I said, we have a very large email list. So when the leadership kind of goes through and really either researches, speaks to all of their various neighborhood associations, friends, et cetera, to get a beat on what people are feeling about something. The Hamlet was easy because we all knew where we were coming from on that. Things like the Cabrari Bridge have different constituencies that are interested in different things. The one thing that we can all agree on is there should not be any semi-trucks allowed to flow through Saugatuck. That, and onto Greens Farms for that matter, because all of those residential areas are filled, as you know, with school bus stops, and they're residential areas that children are frequently on, bikers are frequently on, pedestrians are frequently on. So that is something that we felt we had to take a position on because it would protect, it's an extension of the work we were doing in the Hamlet.
But it's a bridge that's 143 years old.
Yes.
It's structurally deficient. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of issues here. Do you want to go through
there are
the issues and where the Alliance stands on them?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's there's a 175-page or something like that report that details all of those issues and potential solutions to them.
And then you've got bridge navigation, riverside navigation going
Absolutely.
upriver.
You've got environmental considerations, and there are a lot of different people who have different ideas about what's most important to them and how they would go about the solution. One of the things that happened really in the last 2 to 3 weeks as we were coming up on the March 19th meeting with the DOT is that we recognized that it was important to gather everybody together, and we ultimately gathered, 4 different neighborhood associations or associations within Westport, Preserve Westport, Save Westport Now, obviously the Westport Alliance, the Greens Farms Association, and we had a meeting of the minds, brought everybody together, and were able to get everyone focused on the most important issue. The most important issue was to communicate to DOT, the town, the state government, that we could not have semi-trucks traversing Saugatuck or, for that matter, on to Greens Farm. We could not become an alternate for I-95. The solutions are varied. DOT first
Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation first has to come up with solutions that mitigate for that problem. Right now, their only solution for that problem is essentially to do nothing. Now, most people don't necessarily find that an acceptable solution either. So the bridge has to be safed. We want it to be more pedestrian friendly. We want it to have pedestrian alleyways on both sides so that people don't have to cross Bridge Street on either side to get to the other side and walk across the bridge. So with that, there are many creative solutions, and one of the things that we've found is in researching all of the past meetings, which these various neighborhood groups were so great to be involved in all of these 10 years, is in researching the past meetings, we found that the Department of Transportation itself proposed the idea of an exception to the height rule. So this whole thing is about, do we need to go to 16 feet as a standard height, or can we put in a permanent height restriction that restricts objects that are of the height of a semi-truck. Now, one of the reasons why it would have to be a permanent restriction is if it's not a permanent restriction, there are Waze apps now that are specially designed just for semi-trucks that they follow and they see where they can go. We don't know what the future of those apps will be. We don't know if all of those trucks will be driving like unmanned. We have no idea. We don't know what the future will bring. But we do know that if there's a permanent height restriction, that those trucks will not be directed through Saugatuck onto that bridge and traversing onto Greens Farm. So that is what we're looking for. And that is a solution that the Department of Transportation itself has a process for, and it's called an exception, and that's what we're looking for them to do.
Why do they need an exception? Why can they not simply say, we're going to design a bridge that's 13.5 or 14 feet?
They could. You're absolutely right. They can. What we found is in the past, they've worked with towns all over Connecticut and done a lot of different things to basically mitigate for this height problem, or even lane problems. They've had bridges where they originally wanted it to be a 2-lane. It was historically a 1-lane, and they did actually go back and make it a 1-lane bridge. That was a recent decision that was just made. So there are many ways that they can solve this problem. One of the things that I think has happened over the years is that the community hasn't spoken with one priority. And now it seems to be that we have been able to assemble everybody so that they can communicate with one priority in mind. And hopefully that gives the state something to address directly.
Two-pronged question here. Number one, why has the state seemed to advocate for a taller bridge? Mm-hmm. And two, how is the Alliance communicated with the State Department of Transportation?
So first part is, it's a very interesting question, because when you dig into it, they say it's a code, but everything we've been able to find says it's really a design recommendation, this 16 feet height. So that's still, in our minds, an open question. Then what actually happens is the state statutes don't say anything about height. It's a federal design recommendation. The state's priorities are enforcing whatever heights and whatever load bearing is on its roads now or in the future. So it seems to be that, in fact, they don't necessarily have to design something within that design design criteria. They can do other things, if in fact it's a newer solution. But there are ways to maintain the existing bridge. There's adaptive rehabilitation, which would essentially take the platform, which is what it's riding on right now. The truss is not structural. And in a future adaptive rehabilitation, it still would not be structural. There are other bridges that you've had actually structural trusses that have been taken apart and put together and remain structural. So this is really kind of an much easier adaptive rehabilitation, if in fact it goes that way. And then it can be safe, it can have bike lanes, it can be wide enough, and it can have everything we want and the community wants without allowing for semi-trucks.
And what are you finding in your conversations with the State Department of Transportation?
Well, the first conversation was really the May 19th meeting.
March 19th.
The March 19th meeting. And we hope what we've understood is that has opened the door to different communications. We haven't actually sat down with the state since that meeting, but what we have done, and thank you to everybody in our community has done this, have filled up their inboxes with what our priorities are. And we feel that that has made a difference in terms of how they have listened to the community.
You really think they do listen?
That's the hope. And those emails didn't just go to their inboxes. You know, it is an election year. They went to state officials. They went to the governor's office. Mm-hmm. Westport is a very important community as a voting bloc, and also as a gateway community, kind of between the urbanization of Stamford and then on to what. And then as Connecticut progresses to a very different kind of coastline environment as you move northeast. So I think that I would hope that they will weigh these considerations very deeply as we go forward between now and April 17th. What we need the community to do, and we so appreciate coming on at this juncture, is to go on to the Department of Transportation's comment site and comment. And very important to get as many comments in as possible or email them. And if you'd like information, if people out here are listening and would like information about how to get there, you can go to the Westport Alliance's website, www.westportallianceforsaugatuck.com/Kribari. And you will find all of the information you need to get to those sites and comment and email officials.
So what have you learned throughout the process?
Oh, boy. I'm so glad you asked this question. Sometimes I say I wish I had gotten more involved in activism and community involvement 20 years ago, because I have learned so much in the last year, primarily from my colleagues in the Alliance. I've learned a tremendous amount about leadership, politics, community, and one of the things that has been really wonderful is it's a very bipartisan group. We have people all over, or multi-partisan group, I should really say. We have people all over the lot. As you know, we also endorsed or put up candidates in the last election. We were very successfully, and in fact, the only candidate that we are upset that did not take her place still had one of the largest turnouts, but everybody else did remain in place, which is great, or it took new places. We think they'll have a tremendous impact on the town. But, you know, the idea of coming together and hearing people in a much more casual setting who are on different sides of the aisle on other issues that are not about this, but where we're really aligned in our goals with Saugatuck, has enabled us all, I think, to learn from each other in many, many different ways. And also, it's been very open, very respectful, and I think when you're in that type of situation, even more than, let's say, and I think it's great with civil discussions that have gone on to have people sit down from opposite sides of the aisle and talk about politics and why do you feel the way you feel, and having it happen in a much more casual setting where you're really focused on something else, but you know, a piece of news comes up and somebody comments this way and somebody comments that way, and you get a very different understanding of why they feel the way they do, and a very different respect for that. Mm-hmm. You might even move a little bit this way. They might even move a little bit the other way, or not, but it doesn't really matter, because it's about the humanity of that experience and knowing them as people apart from their politics. You know, my business takes me into situations where people are also all over the lot, and my expression is always people are a lot more than their politics. And you know, I think we've lost that a little bit, and my hope is that we all get back to understanding that there's a lot more depth about somebody who might vote a different way than you do, but you know, there's a lot to them that if you don't engage with them, it's not just that you don't learn about their political views. there's so much else that if you cancel them out of your life that you would never learn or enjoy or be enriched by. And I think that is something certainly very special about the residents of Westport, but also about, writ large, Americans in general.
All well and good. Here's my devil's advocate. People say this is NIMBY. Residents of Saugatuck, residents of Greens Farms, they just don't want this in their neighborhood. Trucks have to go somewhere. This is 2026. This is not the Saugatuck of the merchant vessels and the, old neighborhood. Get with the program. This is a bridge that needs to be modernized and adapted to the reality of, today.
Well, there are many ways. If you go to modernization or if you go to build, right, there are people who are only for historic preservation for many, many reasons. And there's an importance to Westport and preserving some of its history. But if you do say there are other solutions that could be modern solutions, that could be any number of solutions. I want to go back to the trucks issue.
Sure.
Okay. So there are many things that could change in how to navigate this river and how to cross this river. The problem with Saugatuck is there are no other roads. There's no other land. Unless you're going to do eminent domain and the state's going to take over its parking lots to make more roads, which they wouldn't do. If they take over their parking lots, they probably will do some sort of residential housing because that's right now what their goals are. We don't know. We do know they have plans for those lots. We don't know what they are. But unless they're going to turn them into alternate routes around Saugatuck, which, by the way, even if they did, eventually you end up in one bottleneck, and that's the Crabari Bridge, okay? Or you end up trying to get downtown on 136. So there are many transit and issues to be solved around that area. And the reason why I wouldn't call it NIMBY is the Westport Alliance itself has always been for smart development. It has not been for no development. But what we do know is that it's a pedestrian hazard and a public safety hazard to have semi-trucks going through this small, restricted area. And if you bottle up traffic, now you're talking about ambulances can't get through there. A lot of other emergency service vehicles cannot get through there. And we, the 1,200 homes of District 1 can't get through to the other side. So, and also, I would say that everybody else, and I said this with the Hamlet, we have the best access to the Metro North Station. We can walk there. Many of our homes can walk there. I walk there even from the other end of Saugatuck Island. It takes me 40 minutes. It's a great walk. It's a little dangerous on certain segments, but the rest of Westport relies on getting to the train station. So if you have semi-trucks in either direction, they're not going to get to the train station or get home at night. So it's something that should concern every Westport resident.
Before I move on to you and your Westport, anything else you want to add about Saugatuck Alliance, the Westport Alliance for Saugatuck and the bridge?
Well, if you want to continue to be updated on it, if people want to continue to be updated on it, if they join our mailing list, our email list, we're very careful about not filling up people's inboxes. But when it's important, we would like them to be informed. We try and only take positions. In general, we try and represent many different voices. So we do try and take a position that I can't say it's neutral, but that is inclusive of many different ideas.
Right.
So
tell me about your Saugatuck. What is Saugatuck to you?
Oh, well, it is a route to various places, but, I love needs. I love a number of the restaurants. I'm a big fan of almost all of the restaurants on, well, I would say all of the restaurants on Ferry Lane, or on Railroad Place. So what it means to me is a vibrant restaurant scene. I know it will be developed. We all know it will be developed. There's,
Spinnaker has now bought a couple of the properties.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see them do?
Well, I think all in all, one of the things that we said throughout the Hamlet is that a residential development would have less activity and less demand on, let's say, commuter parking than what the Hamlet developers were proposing. One of the problems with that development, not that it wasn't pretty in certain places, and when it started and we first saw the original proposal, which looked like a New England coastal town, we were all quite happy. And then when it came back and it morphed into basically a small urban development with aspects that would bring a tremendous amount of traffic and a tremendous amount of use. That was one of the biggest problems with the Hamlet development, is that the event center, the employees themselves would need parking. There were a lot of things that were not thought out and not. And then there was very little recognition of what that space could handle. It's a tiny area. So the idea of a mostly residential development that had some mixed use, where people could, in the hope, quite a number of them would be able to access the train and walk to the train as opposed to taking their cars every day. It was attractive because, in our minds, because it would bring less demand on the infrastructure. Again, infrastructure really can't be changed in that area. So we'll see. We'll see. One of the things we have now a developer who is locally based.
You're talking about Spinnaker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have, we don't know what they're going to propose, honestly. We'll have to see what they propose.
And the Alliance will be involved going forward, making their views known?
Oh, of course. We're a lens into the community, and we provide a voice for the community. We already know that, the community has the same concerns it's always had: traffic, density. So those will remain a big concern, and we'll see how what they propose fits into that.
To be continued.
Thank you.
Dara Lamb, co-founder of Westport Alliance for Saugatuck. Thank you for being here, and
thank you.
Hopefully you will have a swift trip home.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Okay, thanks.